I'm going to record starting now.
All right.
The only thing that we're missing, my friend, is a little bit of music to set the mood.
Oh, I can do that.
Little elevator music, just to.
Yeah. I've got some music I can put on. Hang on a second. I'll put some music on.
Hey, Peter, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, Peter. He was out at the weekend workshop last week, so good to see you. Mike, I can see not much of you, buddy. Can see from the chin down. You got to move your camera up so we can see, huh? Derek, I see some interesting looking wires there. Keep going, Mike. Keep going. Keep going. There he is. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you, Mike. Hope you're doing well. Brad. Hey, Brad. Good to see you, man.
Hi, Dave.
Good to see you, too.
Yeah, Ben. Good to see you. We're saying hi to the people I can actually see. I got some other people coming on board, but we don't have your camera. So if you got a webcam, go ahead and open that up so we can all see each other.
Every day, and Grammarly makes my writing better.
As a student, I like that it's great.
Wow. Bruce, is that you?
I put some music on for you.
Is that you doing the DJ move there, bud? No.
I'm doing it. This is a Toronto artist.
There we go.
It's a love song.
Is it? All right, I'll take your word for it, man.
It's a song that that this young fellow by the name of Scott Hellman did, and it's basically a love song to a girl. And he says, "I've only got you, and you've only got me."
Well, there you go. Sounds like a love song.
It is. It's a cute song. He's a cute kid too.
All right, so we're at the top of the hour, my friend. So I want to thank everybody for being on today's call. This is kind of new. This is different in a couple of ways. First of all, it's the first time, Bruce, that promoted like a full-on webinar experience using Zoom, because Bruce really wanted to have the participants being as interactive as possible on this presentation. We'll see how that works. Plus, it's one of the few times that we're having a lunch and learn kind of a session. So it'll be good. So
Hi, Peter. How are you?
good to see you as well. And you guys, as you come on board, make sure you mute yourselves. Make sure you mute yourselves, please. All right. Very good. Hey, I'm good to see you. Okay, so this is Dave Go. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter for today, Fake Reality TV versus Real Estate Investing, with Mr. Bruce Firestone. I've known Bruce for several years now. And Bruce is one of those people that when he says something, I listen, because he's one of the sharpest guys I know, an immensely successful real estate entrepreneur and an entrepreneur in general. As you'll hear, his academic background is very, very impressive. Quite a bit more impressive than mine, Bruce, to just be perfectly frank with you.
Well, thanks for that, Dave. You know what PhD stands for, David?
I can barely spell it, my friend. I don't know what the hell it stands for.
It stands for piled higher and deeper.
That's okay. All I got was a basically asinine degree in psychology called a BA.
There you go.
There you go. So anyhow, Bruce and I were talking about this a couple of months ago, about different topics that would be of interest to you. And when he kind of touched on this, I said, you know what? This is big, because so many people watch these fun reality, quote unquote, reality TV shows about real estate investing. And it looks so much fun and it looks so profitable. Yet something tells me that's not always the way it turns out. So Bruce has definitely got a lot of background and experience in working with real estate investors across the country, and he's going to set the record straight on that. So, Mr. Firestone, with that, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, thanks again, Dave.
Please mute yourselves. Please mute
yourselves. So everybody, just as you join, if you don't mind, mute yourself, because it's going to be kind of hard to over talk each other. All right. So you just hover your mouse over the Zoom icon, and down below it'll say mute microphone, turn on video. So you can turn on the video, but mute your microphone so that we don't pick up too much ambient noise. Is that okay? Dave, are you reading me 5 by 5?
Am I
David,
what?
are you reading me 5 by 5?
Am I reading you 5 by 5? I'm just going through and making sure we got everybody muted here. So
That's military speak for can you hear me?
I can definitely hear you, my friend.
All right, good. So again, welcome everybody to this fake reality TV versus real estate investing. We're going to be on for about 90 minutes, and we'll get you finished on time, I'm sure. And the title for this webinar came from Dave's idea to sort of compare what good quality real estate training might look like versus what maybe the television sort of tells you is a false reality. At least I think it's a false reality. So, excuse me. So Dave asked me to tell you guys a little bit more about myself, and I'll tell you a little bit. I went to university, went to McGill University. I applied when I was quite young. I was 14, and I turned 15 when I went to McGill. And so I graduated at 19, turning 20, and I applied for a job like any young person would after finishing university. And I went through 3 difficult interviews with Esso, now Exxon. And in the third interview, the senior guy there, the senior engineer, takes me aside and said, "Mr. Firestone, there's an issue and a problem with your CV." I said, "Oh my gosh, what's that?" Because that's a big issue if you have something wrong on your CV. He said, "Your date of birth is wrong." I said, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, it shows that you're 19." I said, "Yeah, I'm 19. I graduated and I'm going to be 20 in December." And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, could you come back in a year and a half when you turn 21? Because the age of majority date back then was 21. And as an engineer, you were considered a child. You couldn't sign a legal document. You couldn't sign somebody's, work order." So he said, "Come back in a year and a half." But I had a young girlfriend. I wanted to get married, and I wanted to have kids, and she wanted to have kids. So I looked around the world, and there was a new prime minister in Australia, and I'm showing a picture of him. His name was Gough Whitlam. I got to know him a little bit later. But there I was, 19, turning 20. I couldn't work in Canada, not legally. So this guy, Gough Whitlam, was a Labour prime minister in Australia, and what happened was he reduced the age of majority to 18, so I would be legal there. And he pulled Aussie troops out of Vietnam. So I wouldn't go to Australia and end up fighting in the jungles of Vietnam. So 3.5 weeks later, I landed in Sydney, Australia, and I started working for the New South Wales government. And so I was there for 7 or 8 years. And during that time, I did a master's degree in engineering science from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. And then I moved to Canberra, which, by the way, Dave, makes Ottawa look like Paris.
Wow.
I mean, it's really a small town, and it's the capital of the country. But there, they had a great university, the Australian National University, where I got a PhD in urban economics. And then my dad came to visit me in 1983, and he said his business here in Ottawa wasn't doing very well. Could I come back for 6 months and help him out? And I said, "Just 6 months, Dad," because I was on track to be a professor. And so when I came back to Ottawa, I found out that my dad and his partners had bought a bunch of roller rinks. Dave, do you remember the disco craze of, I guess, the 80s?
I do. I recall rolling around a rink or two myself.
Yeah. So you put on roller skates and you go in a clockwise direction for a few minutes, and then they stop the music and you go in the other direction. I thought it was incredibly stupid. So I went to the owners of these roller rinks and I said, "Guys, I'll tell you what, I'll make you an offer that you can't refuse, right? You guys can have the operating business, but I'll keep the real estate." So we traded. And they said, "Bruce, you're making a big mistake. You're just a young guy. You don't know what you're doing. This is a cash cow." And I said, "All right, I'll take your word for it. You take the operating business. I'll keep the real estate." 18 months later, Dave, they were bankrupt.
Wow.
And so what I did then was I converted those roller disco rinks to commercial uses. We were just starting to have an emerging tech scene in Ottawa, so I converted them to tech offices, and it was very successful, refinanced that. And then I went on to build about 1,200 homes. I did dozens of subdivisions and office buildings and shopping malls and shopping plazas. And then I got a National Hockey League franchise for Ottawa. I became the founder of the Ottawa Senators. So I've been a hockey guy, I've been a developer, I've been a prof, I've been a realtor, I'm a real estate broker now. I've been a real estate investment and business coach, an author, and on top of all that, Dave, I'm a perfect husband of 1 and father of 5. Just ask me.
Well, exactly. I'm going to ask your wife that next time.
Oh, no, I think it's better if you ask me.
Word for it in the meantime. So, Bruce, tell me.
Yeah.
You've got a pretty wide background there, my friend.
Yeah.
You've done quite a few things that the rest of us.
Right.
Why are you so passionate? What's the big kick for you out of helping newbie and not so newbie real estate investors do what they do better?
Well, I think I'm going to deal with that in the next few slides. And certainly this one sort of, really hit home to me. What I found was that, in the last decade or so, I was really noticing the society in Canada, the United States, was getting older. And there were a lot of people like this poor lady. She's very elderly and she's homeless or she's poor. And I found that more and more people were facing and struggling even into their 60s, 70s, and as this lady is into her 80s and 90s. And then I looked at all kinds of other financial alternatives. And I said for myself and my family, the only things that have worked for us are two things: real estate investing and personal business for life. And I'll talk more about that. So I said, maybe I could bring that message to more people by getting into coaching. So that's what I did. About 82% of Americans and about 80% of Canadians do not have a defined benefit pension plan. So Dave, we don't even know what a pension plan is unless you maybe work for the public sector. So I became really concerned about that. And then recently as March 22nd, so in the last few days, I read this article, which was very disturbing. IBM, one of the great tech companies of the last 100 years, cut 200,000 employees, all of them over 40 or over 50. Certainly by the time you're 60, you're finished. They pushed them out the door and replaced them with younger and cheaper people. So I am coaching now people in their 20s, all the way to the oldest person I coach is 72. And this is why. This is what drew me to it. And something else happened. This is Eric Spratt. And I think for people out in BC and Oregon and Washington out west, you may not know Eric as well, but he's a Toronto-based guy. He's a fund trader, and he's very well known. And we have a school of business in Ottawa at Carleton University, where I used to work and where I used to teach, called the Spratt School of Business, obviously named after Eric. And he came to Ottawa to give the commencement speech, and it was December 2011. I was there with 350 very impressionable, excuse me again, very impressionable young people about to go into the world. And Eric gave the worst commencement speech, Dave, that I have ever sat through. I was embarrassed. There were 350 impressionable minds listening to his every word. And his thing was, for 45 or 50 minutes, invest in gold. So I went back and I looked. The day that he gave that talk about investing in gold was trading at $1,709 per ounce. And then 3 years later, it was down to $1,232. And so some people say, well, maybe I'm just picking on a bad period for Eric and his fund. But I went back and I looked at the fund's performance over a 10-year period, and it was minus 1%. And the trick question I'm going to ask you, David, how long does it take to double your money at minus 1% a year?
Bruce, I told you before the call, I'm not all that great at math, especially when you put me on the spot, man. So, but I'm thinking a negative makes it hard to double anything except how far in the hole you go in.
Yeah, exactly. So, and think about this, if you're a 25-year-old person or a 55-year-old person, even at 25, you only have 6 decades or 7 decades or 8, if you're really lucky, to make money. And 10 years is a very significant period. And if you're making minus 1%, it just isn't good enough. So I was drawn to coaching. Can we do better? And then the other thing that was occurring to me as I went through this is that there are quite a few real estate trainings that I was looking at that are quite expensive, and I didn't think they were really up to par. I thought they could be better. And I know when real estate seminars have hit Ottawa, because within a month or two, I'll get 6, 8, 9 calls like this. Bruce, I just did a great real estate training, and I need you to find me a 100-unit apartment building that I could buy. It's got to make $100 a door, right? So I can make $10,000 a month, and it's got to have great tenants and no deferred maintenance. It's got to have great property management because I don't want to do any work. And oh, yes, did I tell you that it has to be a no money down transaction?
So you get those kind of calls, do you?
I know real estate training. So that's one of the trainings, and you pay a lot of money for that. And I put this up here because I don't know if you ever saw the film Dumb and Dumber, where these guys have all these IOUs in a briefcase. Would you, if you owned a $15 million building, and by the way, if you say yes, I'm coming to see you tomorrow. If you owned a nice apartment building with 100 units in it, was worth $115 million. Will you, and it makes great cash flow, and I don't have to do any work, would you sell it to me for $1 down and an IOU for the rest?
I don't think I would, Bruce.
I don't think you would either. So it's just not real. And then There are other models that we hear a lot about. For example, as realtors, because I'm also a realtor, I'm a real estate broker, and I know there's some realtors on here. Everybody knows, all the realtors on this webinar know that they'll get, after real estate training hits Ottawa, or for that matter, Toronto or Vancouver or wherever you happen to be, you'll get some calls that say, Bruce, here's my idea. It's a genius idea. Brilliant. I have to say, even if I'm patting myself on the back, let's make 50 or 60 offers a month, $100,000 below list price until we find one that agrees. And if we do that, I'll make $100,000. Isn't that great? Except that's not real either. You know, if we made 60 offers on your behalf, Dave, a month for a year, that's 720 offers, $100,000 below. There are 3,000 realtors in Ottawa. There's like 30 or 40,000 in Toronto. How many are there in Vancouver, Dave?
I don't know. I live in Kamloops. Kamloops
I know
has a population of 90,000, but there are about 400 realtors in town here. So.
Yeah. So in Kamloops, you know, if I were living in Kamloops and we tried this strategy, it would be just a few weeks or a few months at the most before every realtor in town and every owner in town would be deleting my emails without even opening them, right? So it's not real. And so even if we found somebody who would do this, it's kind of a once in a lifetime thing. So maybe in a lifetime, anybody on this call, they'll understand that you can get lucky. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to introduce some real estate training where we're not dependent on luck. We could plan for success, right? And here's, I think, the worst model. And people may disagree with me, you know, and I understand as a coach, I'm not a boss, you know, people may disagree, but here's the worst training I think of all. It's the house flipper. And usually what you have is you have an attractive young person, a young woman or young man in a super hot car.
Where'd you find that old picture of me, buddy?
Yeah, well, you know, I had it on my computer, actually, the Dave Dubo look. But actually, that might be me, actually. I'm not sure. No, it's you, Dave. So, you know, you get these really, really nice looking young people in these fancy cars saying, hey, listen, I'm in the house flipping business. I just did the training with so-and-so. This is, you can make, you know, $600,000 a year, and you too can have a beautiful car and a beautiful house. I don't think it's real. I'm going to give you guys an example of that. I guarantee it. I'm 66 years of age. I've been in the real estate business now since 1983, so a long time. If you do this, you will absolutely flip until you flop. And I don't want people to do that. I want them to be able to plan for success. So I'm going to deal with the things that you asked me to deal with, Dave, which is the fake stuff. And then I'm going to talk about the real stuff.
Sounds good.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some of those reality TV shows, you know, where you do have really good looking guys like the Property Brothers. And by the way, I like those shows. My wife and I watch the Property Brothers and we enjoy it. But she knows and I know, and I want everybody to know, it is totally scripted and totally fake. Okay. And if people don't like hearing that, I'm sorry, but it is. And I'll tell you, give you an example. Let's say they show a house purchased for $650,000. And then these two really good looking contractors, impossibly good looking contractors, reno that place, an amazing reno for $60,000. And they do it in 8 weeks. That just isn't real. But after they've done this incredible renovation in like 2 months or less than 2 months, a realtor who looks more like me comes in and says, oh, yes, this is worth $810,000. So the owner has made a profit, Dave, of $100,000 in just 2 months. And if you do that 6 times a year, you too can make $600,000 a year. Totally false. How come I know?
Sounds good, though. Sounds
great. And it is fun and it is entertainment. And I want everybody on this webinar to think about it as entertainment, and that's fine. We all like entertainment. But here's why it's not real. The cost, the labor cost, if you actually had to pay the two McGilvery brothers, the young fellows there, you know, to come to your place, Dave, and spend 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 weeks or however long it takes to actually manage and supervise, can you imagine what that would cost you as an owner? It would be, so their labor is provided free. Many of the materials are donated and sponsored by major chains like Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. And they don't factor into the cost. They were free. Why should they? But for you and me, if we're doing a renovation, we're going to pay for it. And they show that the rentals are done in 8 weeks. In my experience, if you're doing a residential rental of any sort, it's going to take 4 to 9 months to do. So that's not real. And then they ignore all the financing costs, which are very significant. The cost to borrow money, the cost to renovate. You have to borrow money to do that, or it's your own money. And there is a significant cost, a financing cost. And I'll show you an actual example in a minute. And then the other thing too is the owner. You or me, if we're the owner, we're putting in our time. And I say to the people I coach, pay yourself first.
Okay.
Right. So if you're putting in, 30 or 40 hours a week for 6 months on a property, that is a real time factor, and it
So
costs.
that doesn't count as your profit, right? You're basically laboring there, so you don't.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with that. Then they ignore realtor fees, because I'm a realtor as well as a coach. I like to get paid. Most of the realtors on this call want to get paid, so they ignore that. They ignore legal, accounting fees, land transfer tax. In Quebec, it's called the bienvenue tax. And there are no other closing costs taken into account. So all of that is completely ignored, and that's really, really is significant. And the other thing that you'll see is all this beautiful furniture, which you can see on the right-hand side of my screen here, that belongs to this show. And once the show is over, they take all that nice stuff out, and there's a real cost of staging, and I'll show you that. So you don't have to do much Googling around to find headlines like this. Think flipping's as easy as it looks? My story will change your mind. Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminars, a scam. This is not me saying that, Dave. This is you just search in 30 seconds, these will pop up. HGTV shows fake way more than you realize. So if you just spend 5 minutes on Google, you'll see more of it. So I'm going to show you an example of a flip till you flop case study, okay? And I think this will drive home the point maybe better than what I was just saying. So this is quite a nice little bungalow in Ottawa that was bought by clients of mine. I asked them not to get involved in flips, but I'm just a coach. I'm not a boss. People have to make their own decisions. They do, and they have to take responsibility for those decisions, Dave. So they bought this property, and they did a fantastic reno. So this is the living room after it's renovated, the dining room, the kitchen here, if you can see that.
Nice.
And let's keep going here. They did a great job, beautiful new appliances. Great job on, this is all staged. Great job on the staging. This is one of the bedrooms, maybe the same bedroom, another bedroom. I think it's a 3-bedroom house. Great lipstick job on the bathroom.
Yeah.
Really good appliances here. Really great thing. Now, one thing I did ask them to do was I asked them to renovate the basement as well. I mean, I didn't want them to do this flip, but having that basement renovation I thought was really important. So they put a 1-bedroom, 1-den renovation in the basement here, and you can sort of see a secondary kitchen. Can you see my cursor moving around, Dave?
Yeah, I can see that. Yep.
Yeah, so they put in quite a nice basement renovation. It's a 1-bedroom. You're going to see the bedroom in a minute. Here's the little bit closer up. And they used a hot plate rather than a full stove or oven. And they have some, a little less expensive appliances, but they did a good job making it a 1-bedroom, 1-den, lower level suite with its own access. And, again, a bathroom that's not totally renovated, but is certainly cleaned up and is presentable.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at some numbers, okay, Dave?
Sure.
So these are
just let's keep it simple, though, okay, Bruce?
Well, you have to have a PhD, Dave, so sorry for everybody. You can all tune out and I'll talk to myself. I am kidding. You don't need a PhD for this stuff, right? It's real estate made easy. At least I hope so. All right, so this is a flip. They purchased it at a very reasonable price. This is a well-located property, $319. And I don't remember exactly what went wrong, but there was some kind of a flaw when the building inspection turned up. And so they got a price abatement. Everybody knows what a price abatement is?
What do you mean by that? You got a discount?
Yeah, so you go through a building inspection, you find a flaw that wasn't disclosed, you ask the seller for some kind of a break in the price, and they got that $4,000. Then you pay some land transfer tax, they had some legal, so they ended up buying it for just under $320,000. And they put 80% loan to value financing it, so they put in $255,000 first mortgage. But look at this, Dave, on the right-hand side here. They paid 6.99%, so pretty expensive mortgage money, and they only needed it for 6 months, but it was a private financing deal. So they needed $63,000, almost $64,000 of their own cash to close, which they had.
Okay.
Then they said, well, we're going to renovate this building for $35,000. That was their original estimate, but they went $12,000 over budget. Then they hadn't counted on a staging cost of $4,500, $1,500 a month for that nice furniture they rented for 3 months. They had some very significant financing costs of about $9,000. And then this is the line where I said, pay yourself first. 2 people for 6 months, 45 hours a week, they put in $35,000 of sweat equity. That's a real cost, even if it's not a cash cost. Okay, Dave?
Yep.
So they had a total cost of upgrading this building of about $95,000 or $96,000. They needed to fund quite a bit of that through equity. So they ended up, instead of having $60,000 or $70,000 of their cash, they ended up with $125,000, and they had to borrow that extra 60 grand from an RRSP loan. Okay.
Good thing
All
they
right.
could even get a hold of it.
Well, they did. They managed that, and I think one of our friends, you know who I'm talking about, I think might have helped with that. Yeah. So the grand total cost was $415, and when they sold it for $425.
Ain't gonna do it.
And then they paid the realtor, and I think he's on the call, the guy who sold it, Nick, hi, paid the realtor in Century 21, $21,250. They had to pay some more legal costs, so they lost $12,000 for 6 months worth, all the work and all the headaches. Now, Dave, if they had taken a different approach, which is the buy and hold, that's what I coach people on. If they had taken a buy and hold approach and they ended up with a $415,000 total cost, they would have ended up with an appraised value of $425,000. They could rent the main house for around $1,875, the lower level for $1,575. They would end up with a net operating income of about $29,000 a year, which gives them a capitalization rate of 7%. And I'm going to talk more about the cap rate and what that means. But 7%, everybody on this call kind of knows that 7% is not a bad return. In fact, our target in a market like Ottawa is, in fact, minimum of 6%. They would have exceeded that. But there are many other benefits to a buy and hold strategy, and let's look at what those might be. For example, if they had gone in this direction, they would have, after paying their mortgage, they would have cleared about $9,500 a month, so about $800 a month they could pay themselves in free cash flow. Because I believe, and I think you believe, Dave, that we should not buy real estate that loses money every month.
I definitely agree, because I've been there, done that before myself. Not fun.
Hey, Dave, what's the second best business day of an NHL owner's life?
I don't know, Bruce. Tell me, what is the second best day of an NHL owner's life?
The day he or she buys an NHL team. What's the best day of the NHL's owner's business life? The day he or she sells it. Because I'll tell you, it doesn't matter, even if you own an NHL team like I did, if you're losing, $10 million a quarter, it gets old. I mean, how do you turn a billionaire into a millionaire? You buy an NHL team. All right. So what they would have done is they would have had a property, if they held onto it, that would give them $800 a month of real money. My wife calls it IGA money, money you could touch, feel, and spend. That's really important. And they would have had only $75,000 of equity left in the deal instead of $125,000. And everybody on this call knows there are three main returns in real estate. One, you hope for a monthly cash flow. Two, you want to pay down your principal. Every month that your tenants pay you and you pay your mortgage, your principal is going down. And the third thing is real estate inflation. And then here, in this case, if they had held on to it, every year they would have paid about $9,000 or $10,000 off the principal. They get that.
Got a clarification. When you say real estate inflation, is another word term for that appreciation? Market appreciation?
Absolutely. You're going to see that in the next slide, Dave.
All right.
So in this area in Ottawa, Ottawa's a pretty pokey town. It doesn't go up like Vancouver or Toronto or San Francisco or Boston. Over the last 50 years, it's been about 1.5% to 2% of housing appreciation. But recently, it has accelerated as people have discovered Ottawa, Gatineau's on the Quebec side, Ottawa on the Ontario side, is a pretty good place to invest. So real estate is actually now accelerating about 3 or 4 or even 5% a year. That's really significant for our area. So in 3 years, this little place would have gone up in value. So we're driving down the mortgage. We're increasing the value of the house. It means that if they wanted to, in 3 years, they would have been able to refinance his property and pull out almost $66,000. You can see it here on my screen, tax-free. It's tax-free because it's just finance, right? If you loan me $1,000, it's not income. I have to pay it back. So they could take it out of this building, and then they could rinse and repeat. So buy and hold is the strategy that I talk about over and over and over again. And Dave, you'll see at the bottom of this screen here, there's a couple of things I did. I recorded them on YouTube, and just so everybody on this webinar knows, what I'm going to do is after this is over, I'll show everybody how to get these links so they don't have to write down, YouTube and all these crazy characters, right? I'll show everybody. But I put up 2 YouTube videos, how to properly analyze real estate investments using a spreadsheet and how to calculate cap rates and internal rates of return. And I'll make sure that everybody has access to them. All right. Oh, and before I leave this slide, I apologize, is the internal rate of return is very different from a cap rate. And like I said, I will talk more about the cap rate, but internal rate of return has all 3 of those returns: housing appreciation, mortgage pay down, right, and cash flow. So the cap rate on this building would have been 7% and the internal rate of return 38%. Now, that is a phenomenal return compared to, say, what you would get from your bank, which might be 1.5 or 2%.
Definitely.
So let's compare flip versus buy and hold. All right. Okay. In the flip, they put in all this effort to lose $12,000 and pay themselves $35,000 for 6 months, which doesn't seem to be too bad until you realize that was for 2 people. And so the question for you, Dave, is: do you want to work for $17,500 with all the risk and effort for 6 months? I would say probably not.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not.
That's not much better than minimum wage.
You can go work for Home Depot and make about that amount of money, and it's more fun, frankly. And they needed a total of almost double what they thought they were going to need in terms of equity cash to do the deal. So all the risks, I think it's terrible. The alternative was they could have had a cap rate of 7%. They would have had less equity in the thing. They would have an amazing rate of return. And they would have ended up with $65,000 or $66,000 tax-free within 3 years. And what saved them when they actually sold it was the realtor was able to sell it to, I think it was a former RCMP officer. No, actually, I think he was still an RCMP officer who needed the basement apartment to rent it out to make this whole thing work for him. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. So he could make his mortgage payments. So it really was not a great idea. Now, people ask me, is there a flip model that works? And there is one. And it's called being a contractor or a builder or a professional renovator. If you're a professional, and one of the young people I coach, David Goulet, is a professional builder in Gatineau, in the French side of Ottawa, Gatineau, and he builds these triplexes. So he builds these triplexes in Gatineau, or he used to, the company he worked for used to, and he could sell brand new triplexes for $580,000 and still make a profit. And I can tell you, if pretty much everybody on this webinar tried it, except I think David's on the webinar, if they tried it themselves, it would cost them, you and me, if we did it, cost us $800,000 and we wouldn't make a cent. So he could make a 10% cap rate, or you and I could make a 10% cap rate by buying a triplex from him, and and it's brand new and everything works, right? So if you are a professional builder, then there is a flip model that works. It's called sales. Now, there is a flaw in David's model. So when he came to me for coaching, I said, this is terrific what you're doing, but you should follow Minto's model. Now, do you know the name Minto at all, Dave?
I've heard the name Minto, but please go and tell us a little bit about him.
So Minto was started by Irving Greenberg back in the 1950s with his brothers, and they're a home builder. They're active in Ottawa, Toronto, and Florida. They're very successful. And Irving, back in the 50s, said, whenever if I build 100 units, I'm going to keep 20 of them, or I'm going to keep 30 of them. And so over about 3 or 3.5 decades, Minto ended up with a portfolio of 34,000 rental units.
Wow.
And Irving Greenberg, he's now passed away, but Irving told me that back in the 90s, or late 80s, I think it was actually, that Minto had a free cash flow of $40 million a month from that portfolio. Now, even you could retire, Dave, with $40 million a month in free cash flow.
That would do. That'd cover my beer.
Yeah, it would cover your bar tab. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so when Irving was building new buildings, he wouldn't have to go to the bank. He was the bank of Minto, and he would just write a check. He could write checks, of $20-30 million a month to build new stuff, and then that's what they were doing. So they built a commercial portfolio and others. But it started with a very simple model. So I said to young David, this is David here on the right-hand side of the screen, out of every 4 buildings that you build like this, Why don't you sell two and keep two? Right? So even with a professional builder, I want them, whether it's David Goulet and his company, or it's a bigger company like Richcraft, whoever I coach, I want them to keep some of those buildings, because having $40 million a month in free cash flow, no mortgages against it, complete net operating income, put it in your jeans, is where every investor on this call wants to go. And it doesn't have to be $40 million a month. I understand that. It could be $10,000 a month, but that is the direction you should go, and that's what I suggested to him. And so if you think about the model, say he was building 4 units, 4 of these triplexes a year, he could certainly build more, but if he did, and he sold 2, the profits from those 2, David, are his cash engine. So every business needs a cash engine. So those sales are cash engines, but they give him enough money every year that he can hold on to 2 without sort of going bankrupt or stretching himself too tight.
Right.
And so if you think about it, if he just did, he's a young man, he's in his early 30s. If he just did that for 20 years and did nothing else, and he ended up with 40 triplexes, all of them rented out for, I don't know, $1,500, so times 3 is $4,500 a month, times 20, that's $90,000 a month. And again, that would be enough for young David here when he's 55 to retire, right? You don't really need $40 million a month. $90,000 a month would be fine. So that's, I think, where David is going to go as well.
Nice.
So when I started doing this coaching thing, I like to write. It's my only addiction. And I like to write. So I wanted to write a book called Real Estate Investing, How to Get Rich Slow. And our friend Paul Blackier from SpirePoint told me, Bruce, if you put Real Estate Investing, How to Get Rich Slow in the title of your book, you will sell 0 coaching and you will sell 0 books. So I wrote instead Real Estate Investing Made Easy. But it really is Real Estate Get Rich Slow. And so on the people on this webinar, if you're thinking, is there a shortcut here? Is it going to take 2 or 3 years to find that person who will sell me a $15 million building, $1 down, and I'll owe you the rest? That is not real. It'll take you 10 or 12 years of focused effort, and there is work. If you don't want to do any work, then put your money in T-bills, GICs, and that's pretty. You get 1 or 2%, and that's your decision. I completely respect that. And I love this quote from Malcolm Gladwell, who's a well-known commentator. He said, "No one who can rise before dawn 360 days a year can fail to make his family rich." And here I am. I'm 66, Dave, and I still work 3,500 hours a year, and I really love what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's not what people want to hear, but it's what people need to hear.
Well, that is the reality, I think, of life. Some of my young students have read the 4-Hour Work Week, and I tell them that's not real. Okay, I'm sorry, it just isn't real. It's hard work. So what I did when again 4.5 or 5 years ago, when I retired from the university, I started doing this coaching thing, which I love. I say it's so much fun it should be illegal. I adapted the Warren Buffett methodology to real estate investing. I'm going to go through that as fast as I can. How are we doing for time, Dave?
We've got 36 minutes past the hour, so you're a little over half an hour in.
Okay, so we'll be finished by 4:30. I'm sure of that. So what would Warren Buffett do in terms of real estate investing? So Warren came back from the Korean War. I think he was a Marine in Korea. He came back and he applied this methodology to, buying things like a Coca-Cola or Dairy Queen, but I adapted it for real estate. Here's what I think we should do. We should buy targeted, smart, well-located property in cities and towns where the economy is flourishing. It's hard to make money in towns that are literally falling apart, that are becoming ghost towns. It's just really hard in real estate. So you want to be in good places. And, Canada is a fantastic marketplace because we have a very peaceful country, largely. People of all nationalities, all races, creeds, colors, genders. We all seem to get along. It's a wonderful place to live. We have horrible weather, but we have nice people. And so you want to buy in places where the local economy has 6 or 7 different engines of growth and it's doing well. You want to buy and hold for the long term. Boy, I really drilled that into everybody, I hope, today. You want to buy something where you feel passionate about, you really like what you're buying, your gut is aligned, and your head, which is where you do some analysis, are all in alignment. So your head, your heart, and your gut are in alignment, probably going to make good decisions. You have to focus. If you change directions, I'm gonna try residential. No, I hate that. I'm gonna try commercial. No, I hate that. I'm gonna try gold. You will never get anywhere. So you got to focus. And you have to know that real estate's very local. So if I get a call from somebody, can you come to Toronto and advise me on real estate? I can do some advising, but I can't give realtor services in Toronto. I just don't know that market. And Kamloops, I'd be lost, right? So it's local. Let's keep going. And I like keeping the ownership structure simple. When bankers, lawyers, and accountants tell you that every property you buy should have a numbered company
but we need to edit.
All right, just a reminder, everybody, and I'll speak down.
Okay.
Keep yourself muted, please.
At 9:30, she gets here, we'll edit that. And we just need to do any tweaks that we find tonight, right?
I got to try and find whoever it is. And
Okay.
out here.
Honestly, the only thing, I just texted you back, the only thing we need to mention is next week. Services for the newcomers. I think that's a key thing. And maybe if we make a public
That's one thing about this.
we'd like to, we'd like to,
Take your
before we get
time.
into our program, we'd like those of you who, Tony can do
There you
it.
guys.
2 seconds.
I apologize to everybody. Well, they will nuke this guy.
Tony can do it. He's a pastor of the church. He can just invite people.
I can't find
Did you
it.
find him yet, Dave?
Yeah, however, just say we have a newcomers lunch next Sunday after the second service. If you'd like to come and have lunch on us and learn a little bit more about the church, that's it, 10 seconds. We'd really like you to be our guest.
No luck
Yeah.
yet, Dave?
I think you have to ask Nellie about this. She's in my office.
I can't find
That's
it.
just why I'm not here.
All right,
Okay.
I'll bring it all up.
There it is.
Yay. Everybody? 2 thumbs up for Dave. Good job, buddy. That was not easy.
That's a challenge. We've got 62 people on the live call. And
I'm okay with that. It is what it is, and I hope everybody will forgive us for that. So I like to keep the ownership structure simple. I don't want you to end up with 20 properties and 20 numbered companies and different holding companies and family trusts. All the property that I own, David, is owned by me, my wife, and my 5 kids in our own names. Now, I can't tell you what to do, but I keep things extremely simple for me, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that. And if I get a chance to coach anybody on this webinar, I'll explain it in detail. Then next, use other people's money. So in the early days of real estate investing, you want to use maximum leverage, and it's kind of a conflicting statement. You want to have lots of leverage early on, but later on you want to deleverage, right? So one of the things that we do is we load up with debt, but if cash flow is there, we maximize the amount of amortization. In other words, we shorten the amortization period so we can drive our debt down. So it's kind of conflicting advice, but it kind of works. I don't really like partners, Dave. I like investors. Partners want to have a say in your business. Investors just want an ROI. They want you, the entrepreneur, to worry about the business. They just want a return on investment. They want to go to a shareholders meeting once a year and hear how great a job you've done and how much money they've made. And that's it. And then they want to go to the bar. I like investors, not so keen on partners. And I want you guys to all be able to distinguish between good debt, which is mortgage debt, secured debt, and bad debt, like credit card. Credit card debt sticks to you if things go wrong. Hopefully mortgage debt, if you had to sell for some reason, goes away with the asset. I like to treat even my principal residence as if it was a rental. And this is an important statement. Like here in my house here, I have a 1-bedroom apartment on the side, which is rented to a very nice lady, a single mom. In the backyard later this year or early next year, we're going to build a coach house, a little granny flat. So even my principal residence is what I call animated, differentiated, and that's important. Animation is something I'm going to talk a little bit more. It's about adding new revenue streams that were never, ever, ever considered before, or maybe not in the recent past. Manage your properties well, no deferred maintenance, and be as aggressive as possible, as I mentioned earlier, to reduce your amortization period so you could drive down debt. And before you get a refinance, this is a step that a lot of people miss. Before you get a refinance, get your realtor, whether you're in Kelowna or you're in Vancouver or Victoria, in Seattle, wherever you are, get your realtor to do a comparative market analysis. And the reason for that is that a lot of appraisers, Dave, are coming in, and maybe you think the building's worth $500,000. Your realtor thinks it's worth $500,000, and the appraiser's coming in at $480,000. And $20,000 doesn't sound like a big difference, but at 80% loan to value, it's going to leave you short $16,000 in cash flow.
Big difference.
All right. Do we have somebody else?
Second here, Bruce. I'm just going to try something here. Give me a sec. I'm going to mute everybody. Oops. Ah. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to try and unmute you there, Bruce.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Very good. Good job, David.
All right. Learning this technology.
Man, we're learning as we go. And hey, at every age, what's the difference between an old person and a young person, David?
Few years, buddy. That's all. That should be all.
No. The difference between an old person and a young person is an old person has said, I know everything. You can't teach me anything. And a young person is open to learning. I learn incredible amounts every week from my clients. They're teaching me almost as much as I'm teaching them. So the difference between an old person and a young person is when you say, the day that you say, I know everything, you're an old person. I know old 30-year-olds and I know young 70-year-olds. And the difference is an open mind.
Excellent.
All right. So add value, differentiate, animate your properties, add new revenue streams, no deferred maintenance, reduce the amortization period, and before you refinance, get your CMA done by your realtor so that you don't get screwed, excuse my language, but you don't get screwed by an appraisal that comes in too low. Then you refinance and pull out funds tax-free. This is what Warren Buffett has been doing, made him one of the top 4 or 5 richest people on the planet. It's tax-free, it's finance, so there's no tax on it, and rinse and repeat. That means it's a perpetual motion machine. I love this quote at the bottom here, Dave. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Will Rogers, actor. So he was pretty good. So a couple other things on the Warren Buffett methodology. At some point, you stop buying when you've got a portfolio of adequate size and you really accelerate. I've got a rich dentist he's got 307 properties that he owns. Wow. And he's 48 or 49 now. We reduced all of his amortization periods to 11 years because at 60 he wants to be debt free. He's going to retire with a $900,000 a month income. That's what he wanted to do. But at some point you stop buying and you really increase the amortization, pay off your debt.
He's not looking for net cash flow at this point. He's just piling everything right back and paying down the mortgages, right?
He makes $3 million a year from his 3 dental practices. He's okay. But he doesn't want to stare down people's throats when he's 70. He wants to retire at 59 or 60. So we've reduced all the amortization periods to 11 years. He's going to be debt free, and $900,000 a month is what he will retire on at 59 or 60. And once the mortgages are paid off, never, ever, ever pledge that portfolio of yours for any reason. Okay, treat it as an iron reserve. My dad used to call it an iron reserve, and definitely don't refinance it to buy an NHL franchise. And then find ways to pass on your portfolio efficiently and effectively to your heirs, to your kids, your grandkids, whatever. All right? All right, so let me give you another case study here. This is a young client of mine, and I actually did this one directly and personally myself, Dave. This young fellow came to me as an auto mechanic. He was 29. He had saved $115,000, and he was just going to buy, like a home somewhere, and life was going to be as good as he could make it with whatever advice he was getting at the time. But he came to me for some coaching. He was a first-time home buyer, very impressive young man. But we changed his stance, if you will, completely after he did some coaching with me. So what he did was he bought this farmhouse here on a 1.6 acre site. It's about 40 minutes from downtown Ottawa. And what was cool about it is it had a beautiful property, about, like I said, 1.6 acres. But what was really special about it, Dave, is it had not 1, not 2, but 3 really big sheds like this. And one of them was a fully fit up garage mechanic ready to go. Right? And I said, Dan, this is what you want to buy. So it had the main home, which was actually raised on its own, on a new foundation. It had a 1-bedroom basement apartment with its own access. It had those 3 large sheds that I talked about. The mechanic shop was already fit up and ready to go. And we have a lady at Century 21 where I work who's like an amazing MLS guru. And she said, this is easy to find these kind of properties. I said, really? And she said, yes, you can actually test and search and screen for properties with what are called detached garages. And that's how we found this property.
Nice.
And then this is kind of a business model. I'm sorry it's handwritten, but here's a typical business model that we sketch out for our clients. So if I get to coach anybody on this webinar, we're going to be doing one of these for you, Dave, if you ask me.
Nice.
All right. And so here we have, this is a typical business model. Here's Dan. He's a mechanic, and he knows something about cars. And he has clients on the right-hand side. And here's what happened. As his clients started to come to him for auto repair, they would say to him, hey, you know, I've got an ATV. I've got a motorcycle. Can I store it here? And then still other customers would come to him. They would have teenage kids. And they said, hey, you know, you're a mechanic. Can I buy a used car from you from one of my kids? So these business models, on the right-hand side here, you have typically customers. On the left-hand side, you have suppliers. Up here, you have a marketing dimension. And as you do these algorithms, these business model algorithms, you start to learn by actually doing stuff, by developing these business models. A very powerful concept. The iPhone, what makes the iPhone so amazing is not the technology, it's its business model. It is the single most profitable tech invention ever. But it wasn't Steve Jobs and the iPhone itself, the technology. It was the business model behind it, right? The platform, the ad sales. Nobody knew what an app store was before Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. He had a fully thought out business model, and it wouldn't have looked a whole lot different than this. It just would have made hundreds of billions of dollars instead of hundreds of thousands, right? So this is what it looks like now. So Dan is doing motorcycle storage and ATV storage in these sheds, and he's selling cars, not to her, but to her parents, right? All right.
Yep.
Now, I want everybody here to understand that you want to have around you only two kinds of people, people that you like and people that you trust. That's the most, if you don't learn anything else from me today, that's a lifetime. If you don't like somebody and you don't trust them, you don't want them in your life. I don't care who they are. That's it. They're done. All right. So you want to have around you a trusted, if you will, a coach, a trusted realtor, a trusted lawyer, a trusted mortgage broker, people that, you know, trusted building inspector, all of these people who will have your best interests at heart, not their own. That's really important. So let me give you this example. So as we were doing some research on this property, I said to Dan, I've looked at this thing. We're thinking about putting an offer, and you can see it here on my screen. This is the plot plan. It's 1.6 acres. It has no legal road access. So I called up the realtor who was selling this, and I said, did you know this property has no legal access? And did you check the registry out? She said, what are you talking about? Of course it has. It has a driveway. I said, no, it doesn't. I guess you're expecting our client to helicopter in, right? And she just hadn't done her homework, right? So we got a big price abatement for this because Dan was willing to take on the risk of not having legal access to a main road because he got title insurance for it. So his lawyer, who's somebody we like and trust, got him title insurance. And guess what? Here's this another slide here. So here's his property here. Here's the main road. Can you see my cursor going back and forth?
Yes.
And we found this property here where the driveway was. It's 0.6 acres, and it was registered to a guy in 1905, which we assume he is no longer with us. So title insurance agreed at their cost to apply to the court to have this declared in a title null and void, and to have it put into Dan's name, no cost to Dan.
Nice.
If you've got a good lawyer and you've got a good title searcher and you've got a good realtor and good coach, of course, these are the kinds of things that really make a difference. Now I'll show you why. The site was 1.6 acres in the rural area of Ottawa, and Ottawa introduced in November of 2016 a coach house bylaw, which you'll see in a minute here. By adding the 0.6 acres, which was the road allowance, to the 1.6 that Dan bought, he ended up with 2.2 acres. And anything over 2 acres, a coach house addition is allowed, like a secondary dwelling. You don't have to buy another lot. You can build a second house on one property. It's fantastic. So this really made a huge difference. And so here's the coach house bylaw. And if you don't have a coach house bylaw where you live, Dave in Kamloops or anybody else on this, you talk to your local counselors about this, and anybody wants a copy of the Ottawa coach house bylaw, I'll send it to you. We campaigned for 20 years to have this because this has been a huge Huge benefit to real estate investors. Think about this, Dave. Here in Ottawa, you could buy a lot for $250,000 and build a house. But you already have a house. You can build a second one, as you see here, a little one in your backyard, without having to buy a second lot. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. No, that's going to improve your rate of return. Agreed? So anybody who wants to know what we're doing here in Ottawa, I'll send you the Coach House bylaw, and you push your counselors. It's been a fantastic boon, not just to real estate investors, but to tenants, more affordable housing, and to the city as a whole. And coach houses might look like this. I lived in a coach house, by the way, when I was at the University of California at Santa Cruz, and it did look a whole lot different than this. So they can be quite cute, and they can sit in your backyard and make you some more money. So let's look at Dan's numbers. He bought the place for $403,000. They were asking $500,000 for this. The fact that it didn't have legal access allowed him to, steal all the chattels, basically, steal in quotation marks, and get a huge price abatement. Paid some land transfer tax and some legal. So for less than $410,000, he got this property, and the kind of rent he can get for the main house, the one-bedroom apartment, the mechanic shop, ATV and motorcycle storage, car sales, he can make about $135,000 a year from this property. It's a phenomenal success, which gave him a cap rate of about 21 or 22%, which if you think about it, if you put your money in the bank and you get 1 or 2%, that's a pretty good rate of return. And that's before he puts a coach house on the property. All right, I'm going to show you one more case. I think I have maybe 2 more, so I'll try and get through them before we end the seminar or webinar. This is something else I really like. It's called the Spy Loft, and it's called the Spy Loft even though it's a basement excavation. So this is a client of mine, Dave, who is a planner here in the city of Ottawa. He's a brilliant young man, and he and I talked about every one of the people on this call and this webinar. You own the subterranean rights under your property down to the center of the earth. So I said to Alain, why don't you dig out, this is his house downtown Ottawa, why don't you dig out the basement and put an apartment down there? And he loved the idea, so he did. And so if you're looking for a pot of gold, you don't need to find a leprechaun and a rainbow. It's in your house, it's in your basement, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, so this is what he did. The actual address for Alain is 301, but he got a legal address for his kind of little side yard apartment now in the basement called 299. And here's a picture of Alain, and this is after, it was almost done. It was like within 3 or 4 days of being done. So you go down these stairs and you're into the Spy Loft, and you'll see a movie on it here in a second. And you can see here, he had a local artist come and paint a mural. He has done a fantastic job on this. You'll see in this little movie that I'm going to show in a second, he dug down a meter. So he dug down and he underpinned the foundation, and there you go. So now, David, everybody on the call, be patient. We're going to try and get this YouTube video for you. Okay, guys? It's only 2 minutes, so you have to bear with me, and it gives me a chance to, drink some more water, okay? If I can find it, all right? So this is the Spy Loft, the making of the Spy Loft. I'll turn up the music a little bit.
You gotta be clearing your screen, my friend. We can't see your screen anymore.
Can you see it now?
Nope.
Shoot.
So go to the
whatever I did it wrong, right?
Go to the bottom of the screen where it says share screen. Click on the button there.
All right, share screen.
Yeah.
And I want to share this one. I think that's probably the right one. Okay, let me see if does that work?
Give me a second. Yes.
Can you see the making of the Spy Loft video? All right, so I'm going to turn it on now, and everybody be patient. It's 2 minutes and 37 seconds.
Pretty slick.
I thought so too. So let me get rid of that.
Now we got to pop back your. So we got some questions coming in, which I think Bruce is going to cover this in the next slide or two, you guys. So go back down to the bottom of share screen and then pop up.
I will. I just got to give me a second here.
Sure.
Oops, shoot.
So you guys can tell this is live and not pre-recorded, right?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all good, my friend. We're
All
keeping
right.
it real.
We certainly are doing that. Thanks again for being so patient, everybody. But I'll try and make it worth your while. We'll certainly finish up on time. So there you go. All right. So let me go back to share my screen. And I want to share, which screen do I want to share? I think it's this one.
Just start your PowerPoint and then share the screen.
I did that, yeah.
The screen on. Yeah.
Does that share okay?
Perfect.
What are you seeing? The full screen?
It's good. It's good.
Excellent. So, okay, guys, we're all back. All right.
Mhm.
So where we're at now is you understand what he did, but now I'll show you the numbers. The numbers are not as good on this one, but you'll see where we're at. The space is only 26 square meters, less than 300 square feet. But look at his cost, $170,000. Now I have to tell you, that included custom furniture. So what Elan did was in this building, he's got tiny appliances, and you know, you can make things look bigger, but make things look smaller. Does that make any sense, Dave?
Yeah.
And so it is really expensive. It's $586 a square foot. That's comparable to concrete construction of a tall, tower in Vancouver or Toronto. That is comparable. So it's very expensive. Now, he put up if you go on YouTube and you see that video, he put up a Kijiji ad. He got over 600 views. He got 7 people who offered to rent it sight unseen. And he only asked $1,000 a month. So he ended up with about $8,000 in net operating income from this, which is a 4.7% cap rate. So it's below the target I wanted, which was 6%. So not quite what we wanted, but that's what he did. He realized afterwards that he could have asked up to $1,500 a month for this and got it, because it's right downtown in a cool, trendy part of town, and he could have got $1,500. So, but he didn't, and he rented it now for 2 years to a young woman for $1,000 a month, right? So now, let me just talk about a cap rate for a minute. So let's say Ella had taken that $170,000 and he has the cash and put it in his bank account, and he got 1.7% on that, high interest savings account. He would have ended up with about $2,900 a year. With a cap rate of 4.7%, that $170,000 is earning him almost $8,000. So even though his cap rate is not really great, it's not the 6 or 7% or the 20% that we saw earlier, it's still better than putting his money into the bank. So he was okay with it, and he knows that when this lease comes up in a year or two, he'll get about $1,400 or $1,500, and his cap rate will jump to probably 6.5%. But right now, that's what he ended up with. So this is the way you want to think about a cap rate, everybody. I'll make it really simple. Dave Dubo is a rich dude. He buys a house for $500,000 cash. It's a little duplex. He rents the upstairs, he rents the downstairs, he ends up with $40,000 a year in income on his $500,000. He's got to pay some property taxes, some insurance, some other costs. So maybe he ends up with $30,000 in his jeans. That's all it is. It's $30,000 of after expenses, but before mortgage, because he doesn't have a mortgage. He made $30,000 on his $500,000 by owning that duplex in Ottawa or Kamloops. All right, so his cap rate is 30,000 divided by, 500,000. It's 6%, and it's better than the alternative, which is just to put it in the bank. The bank will give you 1 or 2%. The cap rate will generate once your mortgage is paid off. So maybe 10 or 12 years from now, or 15 years from now, will give you 6% plus. There's real estate inflation or appreciation, as David called it. All right, so that's what a cap rate is. It's just what you're going to get after you paid off your mortgage. So if Dave owned $500,000 duplex and he had, say, 6 of them, and he was making $30,000 of net operating income with a 6% cap rate, when Dave retires at when he turns 59 in 20 years, right? What you would have is $180,000 a year of income to go and retire. So $15,000 a month. That's all a cap rate is. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so skill testing question, what's better, 2890 or 7990 a year? Or if there's real estate inflation of 3% a year, which adds, another $5,100 a year to LIS return, what's better, $2,890 a year or $13,000 a year? If you circle B, good for you. That is the power of real estate. All right, next. So what is animation? You've heard me talk about animation. Animation is applying an old rule. It's a planning rule. What is the highest and best use for your property? And how do you create a whole new revenue stream? So in Alain's case, what he did was he created this additional space. He literally created it. He dug it out, right? And it upped his cap rate. It upped his internal rate of return. And he got some really good tenants in his house, all right? So that's what we're looking for, ways to differentiate and improve your properties and bring your cash flow up. That's really important. And one of my other clients asked me, can we apply animation to a condo? And I said, geez, condos are tough. I generally like houses, and I like 10 plexes, and I like 4 plexes and triplexes and all this other stuff. I like small commercial, like mini storage. I like that, small plazas. Until the internet can drill your teeth, people are going to go to the dentist, right? So if you have a nice little plaza and you have a dentist there, it's probably going to work for a long time. So small commercial and residential I really like. I like industrial too. Some things I don't like. I don't like office buildings. I think those are really, really tough to make work. So he asked me about a condo, so I said, I'm not sure, and this is what I saw. We went in and we saw this condo, and it had like 14 or 15-foot ceiling heights, and I said, well, you could make this a 1 or even a 2-bedroom condo. He said, how's that possible? It's just a bachelor. I said, what if you put a loft bed in? So he did. And let me just show you what the numbers look like, okay?
Well,
so he was...
Slow down there, Bruce. You've seen that picture a zillion times, but we haven't. So... yeah, that thing dangling from the top there is a bed. That is so cool. So this is a normal little bachelor condo, and then he suspended the bed from the roof and called it a 1-bedroom.
Yeah, so we went from being a bachelor to being a 1-bedroom or even maybe a quote unquote 2-bedroom in a way. And it's got a, you can see the stairs here, Dave. Can you see the stairs? Yeah, and it's really beautiful. So this thing cost him $20,000 to build. So, oh my God, $20,000. But here's what happened. He was renting it for $1,100 a month. He put this loft in for $20,000, and his rent went up by $550 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's about $5,000 or $6,000 a year of additional rent on a $20,000 investment. You guys are all experts in cap rates now. You can see this in red here. It's about a 28% cap rate. Again, that is a fantastic rate of return. So if you left your $20,000 in the bank and you got 2% on it, you'd get $400. But if you put it into this loft, you get $5,580. What's better? So animations are all over the place. I mean, people who I coach, and there's a few hundred of them that I coach, you know, I mean, I'm learning about animation. It's just coming in from people in Arizona. I've got one client in Stockholm, 2 in Australia, lots in the United States, and of course across Canada. And one of the things that we really like doing, Dave, and I wanted to certainly make sure that I tell everybody today about it, is we like to put into all of our apartments, all of our homes, a tech package. So when a tenant moves in, the day he or she moves in, the day they move in, they've got you know, Spotify and Netflix and Magic Jack phones and Wi-Fi and internet, and they pay for that. And people say, oh, gee, I'm not sure I want to pay for it. And then, you know, trust me, how long does it take out where you live if you moved to get, you know, all this functioning again, Dave? How long does it take you?
It's a pain in the butt. Yeah, it's weeks.
It's hours and hours and hours of work, and sometimes it takes a month to get your technology working. All of our apartments, all of our properties, the technology works a day, and people are paying for that. It's the single most profitable thing we've done in a long time. They get Netflix, Wi-Fi, basic cable, large screen TV, Spotify, and we think basic cable is going to go away in the next few years. So it may be something that's excluded at some point. And we put in good quality speakers as well. Now, I'm not going to go through all the details, but you know, I talked about cap rates being good at, you know, 6% or 7% or geez, 20%. That on a typical property like mine, this house where I live, where you've got a tech package which will be shared by the main house, the side yard apartment, there's an office, believe it or not, in the garage, like an office, and a coach house. You can make almost 400% cap rate on that tech package because you have one tech package, but you're selling it 4 times.
And how much, how much are you charging per month for? Oh, yeah, okay, there you go. Wow.
Typically, we're charging between $115 and $135 a month, right? And we have somebody who operates this tech package. I don't know if he's on this on this webinar with us, but Abe DeHaby here in Ottawa operates it for us, and he's doing a great job. But whether you have 2 units or you have 3 units or you have 4 or you have 10, it just gets better and better and better. It's the single most profitable thing we found in real estate. And, you know, real estate is get rich
slow.
Thank you. So most people, when we talk about real estate business models, most people think we're talking about residential rentals, and people can't really think beyond that. But there's hundreds of these models, certainly dozens of them, but I think hundreds of them. And I'm finding more and more all the time, and it's really exciting, okay? And a business model, you've already seen it, is not a 30-page business plan. Do not come to me with a 30-page business plan. I won't read it. It's a 1-page pictogram, right, of your business. You saw what we did for Dan,
yeah,
and I'm going to show you some more, right? So get ready. You're going to do a business model if I coach you, and it's going to be a great business model. Then you're going to focus on it for a long period of time and make a lot of money. Here's one that we did in Winnipeg. This is Sean Bear in Winnipeg, a really astute, amazing young man. And he was in a job that paid him over $200,000 a year, but he didn't really like being in a JOB. You know what JOB stands for?
Just over broke.
Journey of the Broke. And so Sean wanted to quit it, but it's a $200,000 a year job, but he had a mini storage business, which you can see here, called Total Storage. And what he did was he evolved a model called Tire Chalet, where people, you know, Canadian Tire or your local mechanic, instead of putting the tires, you know, that they're storing, the winter tires that they're storing for you, or the summer tires, you know, throwing them in the back of a warehouse, or worse, putting them outside where they can be lit on fire by, you know, somebody. He will come and pick up the tires, fill up his storage buildings, barcode them, armor all them, and redeliver them to you for like $70. You can see it here. It's been a huge success. And one of the things that a coach can do, whether it's me or anybody else, one thing that a coach can do is he can tell you, or she can tell you, when you're on the right track or when you're on the wrong track. And if I think you're on the wrong track, I will certainly tell you that, as I did with those flippers that I talked about earlier. But if you're on the right track, having somebody who has some knowledge and experience and somebody you like and trust tell you, Dave, this is a good thing, you should be doing this, or Sean, this is a good thing, I think this will work, and it just took off.
Nice.
And this one, I just put this one in here for fun. This is a young man I coach. He and his wife, they run an HVAC business in Kempville, a small town south of Ottawa. And he's in the ice fishing hut rental business. I couldn't believe that there was a business, but there is. And this is his little business model, and I won't go through it because we're going to run out of time. But I think he's got over 60 fishing huts now. And this business model, what we discovered is in the marketing dimension, which is over here, that travel agents are interested in fishing huts because people from China and Germany and all over the place will come, believe it or not, to Canada to sit in an ice fishing hut and experience a Canadian winter. I mean, they just love it. And so there's a huge role for tourism and a huge role for these travel agents to play. And you'll see we discovered some other things as we went along. He does things like he gives out these cool T-shirts. You know, I won't even mention what it says on the T-shirt here. But he does other things like
referring to there, Bruce.
What's that?
I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Well, these are T-shirts that he sells. This is his #1 T-shirt.
I'm being a smart ass, buddy.
I know you are, but this is his #1 seller. But I'm just not going to say it out loud, okay? But you know, baiting fish, that's what it's all about.
Got it.
So he does things like snowmobile rentals. He sells firewood. But here's what we thought was really cool. He started to brand his ice huts. This one is a local Pizza Hut dealer who's got, I think, 5 of his ice fishing huts branded as, you know, Pizza Hut 1, Pizza Hut 2, Pizza Hut 3. And if anybody wants to know about sponsorship, it's another animation, David, that almost nobody talks about. But you got to remember, I come from an entertainment background, and the Ottawa Senators in a small market do about $21 or $22 million a year in sponsorship, right? Signage and sponsorship and in-ice ads and dasher boards, etc. And you can apply it to almost anything. You may not think so, but even if I had a residential rental business as big as Minto's, I would have sponsors. You know, you've got to have dentists who want to sponsor in 34,000 rental apartments run by Minto. Do you not think?
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm a crazy man for this stuff, but I would have I'd have an iPad in every one of those places, and it would flash, you know, Pizza Hut, and it would flash, Dave Dubo dentist, right? We're here to help you. Whiten your teeth, Dave. They look great, by the way. All right. So it is relevant, okay? I believe you on that. And so you can really do well. And if you're going to talk to sponsors, you want to talk about something that almost nobody understands. It's called activation. I'll show you what activation means. So how about you put inside the hut itself beautiful dioramas of pizzas. So there's Dave Dubo and me and a bunch of other people. 1 o'clock in the morning, we might have had a few drinks. We're ice fishing through the holes in the ice. And we're looking around and say, hey, Dave, I'm really hungry. How about you? Yeah. How about we order? So they deliver pizzas, believe it or not, by snowmobile on the ice. That's activation. Do you understand it?
Yeah.
And that's what sponsors want to hear. They don't just want to put a sign there. They want it to be activated. So that's the missing element. So I'm not going to go through all the details here because we only got 15 minutes left. But when you get to cap rates as high as 60%, you could stop calculating. You don't need to worry about it, okay? And one of the things that this young man, Nick, and his spouse told me is, he said, you know what the great thing about ice hut fishing, whatever rental business is, Bruce? I said, that you make a lot of money. He said, no, there's no rent. There's no land rent.
They don't have to pay anybody for being on the ice.
No, I mean, you do have to get a permit because every once in a while, if you leave it there too long, they float away, but it's a free permit. So, you know, it's not like a parking spot in downtown Kamloops. Do you pay anything for parking downtown Kamloops?
Not as much as you do, but yeah, you do pay something.
Parking downtown Ottawa is $225, $235 a month, and he can park his 60-plus ice huts on the frozen river, and he has to have a permit, but it's free.
Nice.
So I said, that's a pretty good business. All right, so are there any takeaways from today? Everybody who's on this webinar is going to get a copy of this slide deck. You're going to get copies of some of the spreadsheets so you can look at them, and if you have any trouble with them, you can always reach out and I'll help you with them. And you're going to have a copy an e-copy of my book, Don't Back Down. That's the book I wrote last year for the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Senators. And the book, the full title is Don't Back Down, the real story of the founding of the NHL's Ottawa Senators and why big leagues matter. And I think there are 4 themes in it. There's obviously a lot about hockey, about NHL, about the Senators, but there's also a personal story. It's my story. And my wife said, don't put that in there, Bruce. Nobody will want to read your story. But that is actually the part that people seem to really relate to, because it explains why people become entrepreneurs. And I really believe in entrepreneurship. And there are a couple of bonuses as well. I mentioned earlier how to properly analyze real estate investments and how to calculate cap rates. So I'm going to put all of this on my personal website. So if you go to BruceFirestone.com, you got to put the M in there. So you see it down here, BruceFirestone.com. And even if you forget all the rest of this stuff, don't worry about it. Just go to BruceFirestone.com and click on blog. And then you just, in the search bar, you put in, if you remember Dave's last name. Dave, do you remember your last name?
Dubo, yeah.
There you go. You put it in, and you'll find it, okay? So go to BruceFirestone.com, click on blog, put in the word Dubo, and about half an hour after this webinar is done, I'll make sure that it's up there. All the links are there, so you can download it. You have to download the book before, I think, the middle of April, so you got a couple of weeks, I think, to do that, but the link will eventually expire. So I put this on here. It's a bit self-serving, Dave, but better than 1,000 days of diligent study is one day with a great teacher.
Well, you know what? That is so true. I've seen that over and over again in my life, Bruce. Like, I've tried to figure some damn thing out and read books and taken courses and all this kind of stuff. Then you hang out with somebody who actually knows what the hell they're talking about, and it's like they can point out where whatever's blocking your way immediately, right?
Yeah, I really believe it. You know, I was very interested in the internet in 1992, and I didn't really understand it. And I had one 50-minute lesson from a tech guy. Actually, it was a woman, a tech woman, excuse me, who taught me a little bit of HTML coding and taught me a little bit about the internet. She spent less than an hour, about 50 minutes with me, and that set me up for 20 years. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't even a day. So what I try and do with people, and this is your question was, why am I doing this? I think, you know, again, I don't want to oversell it, but I think the coaching I'm doing is life-changing. I can help people buy their next profitable rental. I can help them animate, and I've got a team behind me, animate their existing portfolio. If they like small commercial industrial, I'll help them with that. If they want to be in new construction or renovation and land development, certainly I've done that. And really important, I think, is to have your own personal business for life, because like I said, when we started this, Dave, at 40 in tech and at 50 everywhere else, people are getting pushed out the door. And even if you're 30 years of age, you think, oh, that'll never happen to me. At 40 in tech and at 50 everywhere else, they're going to push you out the door. And I'll help you build a stadium if you want to. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not doing that. So one of the things that everybody on the webinar that Dave asked me to do is to give everybody on this webinar a 1-hour pre-coaching session. I normally charge $350 plus HST in Ontario. That's, I think, 13%. I don't know. You don't have HST in BC, right?
Not for this kind of thing. It would be GST.
GST. So it might be a little bit different there. But I'm going to do it for anybody who wants it for $175 plus HST. So if you want a 1-hour Zoom session with me, or if you're nearby, you want to come and visit with me and have a coffee with me, I welcome that. I enjoy it. I love doing this, and I'll help you with something that Dave and I are calling, we call it the clarity session, right? So one of the things that really helps people, I find, in their heart, in their head, is when they have clarity. Like when I left the University of Ottawa at my last day of teaching, I didn't know what I was going to do. And that lack of clarity upset me. And I think it would upset anybody. There I am at 60 or 61 with hopefully, a few more years to live. And I didn't know what my next mission would be. And so there is a certain, I don't know, queasiness or uncertainty, I guess, that goes with it. When I actually got myself a life coach, and she helped me focus. And I only took about 6 or 7 hours of coaching with her, but she was amazing, and I'm really grateful to her. So I will spend an hour with you. It will cost you $175 plus some kind of tax. And we'll talk about real estate and personal business for life models. We'll talk about your financial goals. We'll review together where you're at, where you want to go, and how to get there. Okay. And this is a quote that I wanted to leave everybody with, from a guy who's a hero of mine, Warren Buffett. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. And if you have a good coach, whether it's me or anybody else, or a trusted advisor like Dave Dubo in your life or Paul Blackier, they can really help you be certain about your direction. And that, you're right there, your life will improve, in my opinion. All right. So if you want a clarity session, how do you go about getting it? Just reach out to me by email. I'm on my email pretty much all the time, except weekends. I give everybody, Dave, a service level agreement. I will get back to you the same day or the next day, except weekends. I am 66 years of age, and I do have a family, and I spend time with them on the weekends, but certainly I will get back to you the same day, the next day. Unless you email me on a Friday, it will be a Monday. Okay? So if you want to get a hold of me and you want to book a session with me, a 1-hour session, just bruce.firestone, excuse me again, at century21.ca.
So what I've done here, Bruce, just so you know, is I put that in the chat box for everybody. I sent that to everybody. So if you're interested in booking a session with Bruce, which I would highly, highly recommend.
Well, thank you for that, David. And I'm really grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to talk to your group. It means a lot to me. I do this because it's a calling. And again, I don't want to oversell it, but it is truly a calling. I love doing it. And the one thing that I would say to you is that each session I do is individually tailored to you. So you have to do a little bit of homework before you do your session with me. And that is, I want you to create and send me your agenda. What are the burning questions? What are the things that are bothering you? What are the opportunities that you think are there in your life at least 3 days before? Because I prepare for these sessions. I don't just wing it. I look at every single one of the agendas that I get. I think it through, and we're going to have a great 1-hour session together. Okay?
Let's do this then, Bruce. So if people are interested, go ahead, click on, grab, copy and paste that email address out of the chat box, and then email Bruce so he'll know who you are and that you're interested. He'll get you set up with the time frame for your session. He'll send you what he needs for your little homework so that you can prepare. Because here's the thing, right? When you spend some time with somebody like Bruce, you don't want to just show up on the call and kind of shoot the shit for 15 minutes. You want to jump in and know exactly what you're going to be talking about right away. You've got 1 hour of his time. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you go in properly prepared. So go ahead, email him, bruce.firestone2018Mar28. He will send you back the information he needs from you, and you'll go back and forth, get your time figured out for that, payment, all that kind of detail stuff. And then when you jump on the call with Bruce, you'll really, really get the full benefit from that. So yeah, that's fantastic.
I really appreciate that.
No, you don't get a phone number. You get the email address. He doesn't want. We had 160 some people interested in this webinar. We don't ever want everybody calling him. So
yeah, just so you know, David, you know, we have over 300. I have over 300 people in the coaching system. I have 650 active real estate clients, and I have 65 really great realtors running around. So if everybody called me every day, I could do nothing. So please email me, and I love hearing from you. And just make sure in your email that you tell me you were on the Dave Dubo webinar, and we'll set it up. And I look forward to talking to as many people as want to talk to me. I just want to say I do have a Twitter handle here at Prof. Bruce. You can tweet me at any time. I'm on that all the time. You've seen my my website here, brucemfirestone.com. There's lots of resources there for you. And there is a cell phone number here. So if you want to text me, you can do that. But please, no calls. I mean, if the house is burning down, my clients will call me, right? But if it's not burning down, they'll text or email me, because I can handle a few hundred emails and texts, but I cannot handle a few hundred phone calls. It just wouldn't work. And again, I want to thank everybody. We are at 4:26, so we were just about on time, David. And I just can't thank you enough, David, for this opportunity.
All right. So if you have any quick questions, you guys, we just want to respect your time. If you have any quick questions, you can go ahead and type those in the chat box, and then I can unmute you if you'd like to talk about that in person. And otherwise, we'll wrap things up. And again, I highly recommend it. Send Bruce a quick email if you're interested in having a one-on-one session with somebody of this caliber. I highly recommend it.
Can I just add one more thing, Dave, since we have a minute?
Yep.
In June of this year, we are going to unveil the young man I talked about, David Goulet, and the builder, and an architect by the name of Chris Delcosi, and a group are going to unveil what we think is a revolutionary real estate product that's going to change the world. I'm not kidding. These people are doing something that's really extraordinary. It'll be unveiled on June 2nd at Realtopia, and it is an event that's being held here in Ottawa, but if anybody's interested, it's called Realtopia, just like it sounds, Realtopia. If anybody's interested, we'll set them up with a Zoom call so they can, they can just sort of zoom in, so to speak, and see what we're doing, because it's going to be really special. I'm not allowed to talk any more about it, though.
All right, very good. And we got lots of comments here saying, great job. Thank you, gentlemen. Very helpful, Bruce. Thanks, Bruce and Dave. So thank you, everyone, for being on this Lunch and Learn. And you know what? This worked pretty well for our first attempt at doing something like this via Zoom. So thank you very much for participating in that. And Don says, did I hear Bruce say that his presentation is going to be made available to the attendees for review? Yeah, so hopefully the recording has worked, and I will get that up on a replay page along with some links to the different stuff that Bruce was talking about there on the presentation, and should have that up for you in the next day or so. All right, you guys. All right. Thanks very much.
Great job, David, as always, and you were a wonderful host, and again, a gracious host, and thank you, and thanks everybody. That was, I think, a good day for me, and I hope for you.
Awesome. All right, everybody, take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.